In 1815, a man died under circumstances that even now remain shrouded in speculation. His name has faded into the dust of county records, whispered only in passing by genealogists and the occasional local historian. Yet what he left behind is what ensures his memory cannot be erased. 1,400 acres of remote farmland, 12 horses that no one dared ride after his passing, and most curious of all, a private library filled with rare volumes, some dating back centuries, many annotated in his own hand. Viewers of Silent Heirs, if you haven't already, subscribe now to follow stories like this, unsolved mysteries, forgotten legacies, and the strange weight the dead can leave behind for the living to inherit. The will itself was the first source of unease. Unlike most documents of its kind, it was not read aloud in the courthouse, but instead was delivered privately, under seal, to a single executor. That man, a county judge, would later confess in writing that the will disturbed him, though he refused to say why. The inventory alone was enough to cause unease. 1,400 acres in the early 19th century represented a fortune. 12 horses, all black, were accounted for with precise breeding notes, but no mention of their origins. And then there was the library. 216 volumes catalogued, some recognizable, Pliny, Milton, Shakespeare, but others bound in cracked leather, their titles in languages the executor could not read. In his notes he wrote only, certain volumes were not meant for public knowledge. Those volumes vanished before the estate could be appraised. But it was not the books that frightened the heirs, it was the land. The will named no family, no children, no distant cousins. Instead, the acreage was left to those who remain loyal, though they be unseen. That phrase alone has been the subject of speculation for over 2 centuries. Some argue it was a poetic gesture toward nature itself, or perhaps to a group of tenants who lived on the land. Others whisper of older meanings, that the phrase was not metaphor, but literal, that something unseen, something still present, was meant to inherit. The judge had attempted to transfer ownership, selling parcels to interested farmers, but each buyer, without exception, abandoned their claim within a season. They reported unease, hearing hoofbeats at night, though the horses were locked in their stables. Others found their fields blighted, as though some curse settled over the soil itself. By 1820, the land was again vacant, though the horses remained. They had not aged. Farmers who passed by swore the herd looked identical to the one described 5 years earlier, glossy coats, restless eyes, as though waiting for a command that never came. The horses were the first to invite rumors of the unnatural. Children dared one another to climb the fence and touch them. Most who tried returned unharmed, though shaken, unable to describe what they felt. One boy claimed the horse's skin was cold, as though no blood pumped beneath it. Another said the animal spoke, not with words, but with a thought pressed directly into his mind: go back. Adults dismissed these tales, but none dared purchase the horses despite their obvious value. They became fixtures of local folklore, called the dozen, creatures neither living nor entirely dead. It was not until 1831 that a traveler, a man named Samuel Price, recorded a night spent near the abandoned estate. He had camped beside the old fence line and described in his journal a dread procession across the fields. At midnight, the 12 horses moved in perfect unison, circling the largest barn. Their hooves struck the ground in rhythm, yet there was no sound, only the impression of impact. Price wrote that he felt the earth tremble, though his companion insisted nothing stirred. At the climax of the ritual, the barn doors opened without human touch. From within came not light, but a darkness deeper than the night around them, a void that seemed to swallow stars. The horses stopped, facing him, and Price fled before dawn. He never returned, but his account survives, passed down by his descendants. By then, the library had become an obsession. The missing volumes were rumored to have been hidden somewhere on the property, or sold quietly into private collections. In 1847, a scholar named Elias Harrow convinced the county to grant him temporary stewardship of the estate so he could search for them. He spent 3 months on the land, cataloguing what remained. His notes grow increasingly erratic as the weeks pass. At first, he describes mildew, weather-damaged pages, and ordinary decay. By the second month, he writes of symbols carved into the wooden shelves, symbols that seem to rearrange themselves overnight. By the third, he no longer wrote in English. His entries slip into a cipher, one that no historian has yet cracked. Harrow vanished without a trace, his final note left pinned to a stable door: "The heirs have come." From then onward, the estate gained a reputation as cursed. No family settled there longer than a year. The soil itself seemed to reject cultivation, as though some buried force pushed back against the plough. Yet the horses endured. Always 12, no more, no less. When one was shot by a trespasser in 1864, its body reportedly turned to ash within minutes, leaving nothing but a blackened horseshoe. Days later, another horse appeared in the pasture, identical to the one lost. What tied these horses, the land, and the vanished books together? No single thread has ever been proven, yet the pattern suggests intent, not coincidence, not legend. Something designed to last beyond the death of its master in 1815. Something waiting for those who would trespass or inherit. The story does not end with horses or farmland. The deeper mystery lies in the will itself, and the phrase that continues to echo: "To those who remain loyal, though they be unseen." The question is, loyal to whom? Or to what? The phrase from the will haunted every attempt to settle the estate. Farmers, surveyors, even opportunistic drifters who wandered onto the property repeated it like an incantation: "Those who remain loyal, though they be unseen." Each repetition seemed to deepen the unease. As the 19th century progressed, the land stood untouched, while the county around it grew, fields plowed, homes raised, railroads carved into the soil. Yet the 1,400 acres lay fallow, patrolled only by the 12 black horses, and watched over by a library no one dared to open. By 1870, reports of strange sightings grew more numerous. Travelers passing at night swore they saw figures among the horses, shapes half human and half shadow. Some claimed the shapes were riders, seated high in saddles, their heads bowed as if listening to orders unheard. Others insisted the figures were not on horseback at all, but instead moved beside the animals, keeping pace with inhuman grace. Witnesses described tall silhouettes, limbs too long, faces hidden in perpetual shadow. Whatever they were, they vanished when approached, leaving hoofprints in the dirt without human tracks beside them. It was during this period that the first documented paranormal encounter was recorded. A preacher named Reverend Alden was sent to bless the land at the request of the county. He walked the perimeter with his Bible, reciting psalms, but as he neared the barn described in Price's journal, he faltered. His voice broke, and his companion later testified that the Reverend stared into the dark doorway as if something stared back. He dropped his Bible, and the horses surrounded it. The animals pressed in so tightly their bodies formed a ring, trapping the book at their feet. When the Reverend tried to retrieve it, they did not move, and he retreated. The next morning, the Bible was gone. Alden resigned his position weeks later, writing only that the land was consecrated already, though not to God. His warning spread, but so did curiosity. For every family who feared the cursed ground, there was a scholar or collector drawn by the promise of the vanished books. They believed the library held volumes of extraordinary rarity, grimoires, forgotten histories, perhaps even original manuscripts thought lost to fire and war. The speculation that these works contained forbidden knowledge only intensified the fascination, yet none who sought the books succeeded. Some returned empty-handed, shaken and pale, others never returned at all. The horses, meanwhile, remain the constant. A cryptid sighting in the 1890s described them not as animals, but as sentinels. A hunter who trespassed on the property swore the horses did not graze, did not sleep, did not behave as living creatures should. They stood in fixed positions, always facing inward toward the barn, shifting only when the sun fell. At night they moved in unison, their hooves never making sound. He described eyes like mirrors, reflecting more than light. When he raised his rifle, he found he could not pull the trigger, as though some unseen weight pressed down on his arm. He fled before dawn, convinced the animals were guardians rather than livestock. The unsolved mystery of their origin deepened when county records revealed no purchase, no birth records, no bills of sale. It was as though the horses had appeared from nowhere in 1815, part of the estate yet belonging to no one. Rumors circulated that they had been summoned. One local folktale claimed the deceased landowner had been part of a secret society devoted to preserving forbidden knowledge. The horses, the land, and the library were not simply property, but offerings, an inheritance promised to unseen allies. The climax of the 19th century encounters came in 1899, when a group of young men from a nearby town dared one another to spend a night inside the barn. Their account survives in fragments scribbled on the back of an almanac. At first, they described only dust and silence. But around midnight, the horses gathered outside the door, their bodies forming a wall. The men swore the temperature dropped suddenly, their breath misting in the air though it was late summer. Then came the sound, a low, pulsing rhythm, like a heartbeat magnified until it filled the building. One of them opened the door to flee, but what he saw was not the pasture. It was a void, black and endless, with faint shapes writhing within it. He shut the door and collapsed. By morning, only 2 of the 5 young men were found, wandering dazed and unable to speak. The others were gone, their bodies never recovered. After that night, the county sealed the property. Fences were raised, signs posted. The library, locked and chained, was moved into a separate building on the edge of the acreage. Yet those who tried to remove the books reported strange interference. Wagons carrying volumes would overturn without cause, fires would ignite in nearby fields, storms would appear on clear days. After several failed attempts, the remaining collection was left where it stood. Dust gathered, pages yellowed, and the horses watched. The 20th century brought a new kind of fascination. Folklorists catalogued the estate as one of America's enduring unsolved mysteries, placing it beside tales of haunted plantations and spectral battlefields. Paranormal investigators camped on the edge of the property with primitive recording equipment. Some captured unexplainable static, others faint voices repeating fragments of the will. One recording caught the sound of hooves, though no horses appeared on film. By the 1950s, the legend had expanded into whispers of a curse of inheritance, the idea that anyone who claimed the land or even handled the books would inherit not wealth, but the allegiance of the unseen heirs. What unsettled investigators most was the consistency of the reports. Over a century and a half, the same details repeated: 12 horses, always black, always watching. A barn that opened onto something not of this world, a library that refused to be moved. And the lingering words of a dead man's will, speaking of loyalty and unseen heirs. Even today, the land is avoided. Satellite imagery shows the fields lying empty, the soil unplowed. The barn remains, its roof sagging but still intact. And though no caretaker is employed, the horses are always visible, always 12. Photographs confirm what the earliest journals recorded: they have not aged. They have not died. They remain guardians of something that should not be disturbed. What remains unclear, and perhaps most terrifying, is whether the true inheritance has yet been claimed. The will named no family, no bloodline, only loyalty, which means the heirs may not be bound to lineage, but to intention. To curiosity, to those who step onto the land seeking answers, to those who open books better left closed. The unseen heirs may not be waiting for blood, they may be waiting for you. By the turn of the 21st century, the estate had transformed from local legend into a case study whispered among researchers of the paranormal. Amateur investigators with handheld cameras and digital recorders slipped past rusted gates, each hoping to capture proof of what countless journals and testimonies already described. What they found was rarely what they expected. One such group entered the library in 2003, recording as they pried open the doors sealed with chains a century earlier. The footage is grainy, unfocused, yet enough detail remains to unsettle. Dust billows as the chains fall, and inside, shelves loom in the half-dark, every surface layered in decay. At first, the investigators whisper nervously, calling out titles of books in Latin, French, and Greek. Then the footage grows erratic. The camera swings to the floor where pages scatter, not yellowed as one would expect, but crisp and clean, as if freshly printed. They are covered in handwriting, but none in English. Letters twist into shapes not recognized by linguists. A low sound begins, perhaps interference, perhaps something else. The cameraman curses, begging the others to leave. The final frame captures what appears to be the corner of a shelf bending, wood curving unnaturally, as though the library itself were breathing. The group fled, abandoning their equipment. Only fragments of the tape survive online, circulated in forums dedicated to unsolved mysteries and cryptid sightings. It was not the first nor the last time the library rejected intrusion. In 2011, a collector attempted to smuggle out a single book rumored to be bound in calfskin. His car was later found abandoned 20 miles away, still running, driver's door open. Of the man himself, no trace. Inside the car was the book, sealed shut, its pages fused as though welded together. His disappearance was never solved. The library remains the most tangible piece of the mystery. Witnesses describe it as more than a structure, more like a vessel, a container designed to hold something that resists being held. Scholars who have examined the surviving catalogue note peculiar consistencies. Themes of resurrection, communion with the unseen, treatises on loyalty between man and forces unnamed. Margins are filled with annotations, some legible, others written in the same cipher used by Elias Harrow before his disappearance in 1847. Decoding attempts yield little, except for one chilling phrase repeated across multiple volumes. The horses are the wardens. This phrase links every strand together: the land, the horses, the will, and the library. Each piece is not separate, but part of a single inheritance, guarded and preserved across centuries. Those 12 black figures in the fields are not simple animals. They are watchmen, bound to keep intruders from claiming knowledge that was never meant to be shared. Their endurance, unchanging, eternal, is no longer questioned by locals. It is accepted. Like a mountain or a river, they are part of the landscape, as old and immovable as the ground itself. Yet there are those who argue the horses are not guarding at all. They are waiting for the rightful heir. The will's strange wording, to those who remain loyal though they be unseen, suggests inheritance is not a matter of legal claim, but of allegiance. And if allegiance is the requirement, then perhaps the heir has already come. In 2017, a photograph appeared briefly on a private forum before being removed. It showed the barn at night, its doors wide open. Inside, not darkness, but shelves of the library, illuminated by an unnatural glow. More disturbing still was a figure in the doorway, facing the photographer. Its shape was humanoid, though elongated, and its face obscured in shadow. Behind it, the horses stood perfectly still, their eyes reflecting the glow from within. The poster who uploaded the image vanished from the forum after a single reply: "The heirs have returned." Skeptics dismiss the story as folklore, inflated by internet mythmaking. Yet the estate persists as a site of genuine dread. No development company dares purchase the land despite its value. Drone footage confirms the barn still stands, sagging but intact, and the horses still patrol. Reports of voices captured in static, of footsteps in empty fields, continue to surface. What no one disputes is the danger of the library. Those who seek it often do not return, and those who do are changed. They speak of dreams not their own, of words pressing into their minds during sleep, of loyalty tested by visions of vast, starless plains. Some awaken with soil beneath their fingernails, though they never left their beds. Others describe the sensation of reins gripped tightly in their hands, though no horse was present. The final twist of this mystery is perhaps the most unsettling. The estate has no official owner. The will left everything to unseen heirs, and the county long ago abandoned attempts at reclamation. Legally, the land exists in a kind of limbo, unclaimed, unwanted, yet not abandoned. Records simply list its ownership as in trust, but whose trust? The unseen heirs or the wardens themselves? If inheritance is still waiting to be claimed, then the question becomes, by whom? Perhaps by one who opens the right book, speaks the right words, or stands long enough in the barn as midnight falls. Perhaps by one who accepts the loyalty offered by the horses. Or perhaps inheritance has already passed, quietly, without announcement, and the heir walks among us, guarding secrets too vast to be spoken. The truth may never be revealed, but the silence of the land, the endurance of the horses, and the locked library together form a warning. Some inheritances are not gifts, but burdens. Some estates are not homes, but prisons, and some heirs are not human at all. If you ever travel through that county and glimpse 12 black horses standing still in the distance, remember what they are said to guard. Do not approach, do not linger, and above all, do not listen if you hear a voice in your mind whispering that the inheritance could be yours. Thank you for listening to this tale of inheritance, silence, and the unseen. If you enjoy stories of unsolved mysteries, eerie legacies, and encounters with the paranormal, subscribe to Silent Heirs, where the past is never truly buried and the heirs are always waiting.